Why don't we, okay, let's start. Hi, I'm Michael Makovsky. I'm the president CEO of Jinta. Thank you very much again for joining us as we talk about Israel's Operation Rising Lion. We're joined as we have been for the last week by General Norkin, Jinta's distinguished fellow, the previous Israeli Air Force commander, General Yaakov Amidjor, a previous national security advisor to Prime Minister Netanyahu, and a distinguished fellow with Jinta, our third general, Yaakov Aish, the Jinta senior fellow, senior vice president for Israeli affairs, and former head of IDF operations, and also John Hanna, our Randy and Charles Wax distinguished fellow, senior fellow. Okay, thank you for everybody joining us. I know we have a lot of people on this webinar. Let's get to it now. Let me just say at the outset, I'm sure many of you saw President Trump's statement from the White House just a little bit ago that President Trump might wait up to 2 weeks to decide what to do, which presumably means whether to join
within 2 weeks. Within 2 weeks.
Okay, thank you very much. I think I said up to, but it's the same thing, General. But I appreciate my Israeli colleague trying to my English. Anything on Churchill you want to say, General Amidjor? Okay.
He waited to the American decision a long time.
Yes. Okay. Yes. Actually, maybe Churchill is relevant because Churchill said that the United States always does the right thing after trying everything else. So, let's see. We saw that. So there's also reports of direct phone conversations between senior U.S. official Steve Witkoff, and the Iranian foreign minister. We see that the Iranians are also, I think the foreign minister is going to be meeting with the EU3, several European officials to also explore a diplomatic settlement. Meanwhile, the U.S. is moving more and more military assets to the region. We've also seen that, at least this morning, U.S. time, Soroka Hospital in Beersheba was hit by a ballistic missile, and other areas in Tel Aviv. But so there's a lot going on, but let's explore. Let's see what we could find out. So I'm going to start with. I want to get, obviously, the biggest wild card right now is the U.S. side. The Israelis seem to be making progress, but let me ask General Norkin, who had told us the other day that the Israeli campaign was advancing better than had been expected, or better than planned, and he had been involved in the war planning when he was commander. So, General Norkin, how do you feel about how's the campaign going today on day 7? And maybe you could just also fill in a little bit what the Air Force has been trying to accomplish in the last few days since we last spoke.
Well, thank you, Mark, and thank you for the opportunity. I think that today the main issue in Israel is that Iranian launched a missile to the hospital of Soroka in Beersheba, which is, let's say, to attack an hospital with people and children. This is something that, of course, we cannot accept. Having said that, the Air Force is keeping the campaign against all the military assets, the industries that support the nuclear program and the ballistic missiles program. We already did hundreds or maybe more than 1,000 sorties above the Iranian soil. We can see that the Israeli UAVs also acting over Iran. We lost one of our UAVs yesterday. and those UAVs, they are attacking ballistic missiles launchers and other assets, and also they are, let's say, hunting commanders in the Iranian bases. And I think that those activities, they are making the distance of Iran like the distance in Gaza. So we act almost with the same capabilities like we did in Gaza, which is quite amazing. Most of our combat fleet need to do air refuel. And we talked here in the GINSA webinar a lot about the KC-46. Still now, we are still using our old Boeing 707, and we already did more than 600 air refuel sorties. So they are working very hard. And maybe the third thing that I might mention is that we attacked some of the infrastructure and the facilities and the capabilities in Iraq, the nuclear reactor, which is not the most important one in Iraq, but it's still part of the Iranian nuclear program and nuclear capabilities. So till now, I think that all the offensive plans, we are doing quite well. The challenge is still in the defense plan. We would like to reduce the amount of missiles that hit the Israeli population. The American forces support us a lot with the Aegis and with the THAAD. And as the media in Israel already published, the Israeli Air Force destroyed 2/3 from the Iranian ballistic launchers. And we understand that now they launch those missiles from areas that they are much more eastern areas compared to the beginning of the war. So they got some challenges with the distance. So those are the main updates since the last 2 days. And the main issue now is, as you mentioned, is the decision, the American systems.
Let me just ask you a little. I know, let me say for the audience, I was told before from General Norkin, I could not ask about how Israel would go about or what capability they would have to destroy Fordow on its own. And I couldn't ask you about Israeli arrow interceptors, how many are left. So I'm not asking about those two questions. So, but let me just are you saying that going, just one thing about going forward, because the last thing you said was waiting on the U.S. decision. So should we expect, assuming no U.S. decision in the next few days, more of the same, hitting more of the ballistic missiles? Will there be more like attacks on the non-Fordow nuclear facilities? I guess what should we be looking for going forward then?
Well, as we know, there is no golden egg in Iran like we had in Syria 2007 or in Iraq 81. The nuclear system is all around, and we need to dig all the targets, not just the underground, all the industries, all the manufacturing procedure that we'd like to take out, and by that to support the government goal to delay the capability, the Iranian capability to rebuild any nuclear capability in the next few years. So we should attack many of those parts and the whole chain of the nuclear capabilities. And of course, Fordow it's a challenge. We are building our capabilities, and I think that it might be part of the story, but we keep those to see what happens in the next few days.
One last thing, and then I'll turn, there have been reports that the Israelis have said 1 to 2 weeks more of this operation, or to put it in General Amidor's terms, within 2 weeks, that Israel might be finished. Does that timeline still make sense to you, or?
Well, I think that this is not the right thing from the Israeli side to announce about the timeline.
Yeah.
But for Israel, as I talked about it in the previous webinars, Israel is not a state that is looking for long wars.
Yeah.
It's much better for us to do it in the shortest timeline that the military can support.
One last question, and then I'll go. Sorry, I said one more. Is there any concern you have about until Fordow is, we're waiting on a U.S. decision, that the Iranians are moving things out of Fordow, diverting some things inside in case?
Well, I think that the intelligence we have together with our colleagues and friends is quite good, and we are monitoring the Iranian activities quite well.
Okay. All right. Let me turn to General Amidor this time, then we'll go around in the box that I see, and then John and General Aish. General Amidor, how do you see things today? And I know you'll leave the U.S. decision to the U.S., but what's your view from there about this President Trump's statements and so on?
I think, and I said it from the beginning, that if the Americans decide not to go in, Israel will have to find a solution. When we said that the Air Force cannot do it, the situation was totally different. We had Hezbollah, we had to fight the whole way to Iran. Now we have a free corridor to Iran. Now we have almost a full control of the skies of Iran. In this situation, maybe the Air Force will have a better idea how to do it. And even if we cannot destroy it totally, the damage will be big enough. Fordow is not something that you can evacuate. It's huge amount of centrifuges that you cannot take out home. I mean, it's something different. And if you take them home, they are irrelevant. You have to build a facility to use them. It is not something that can be evacuated. You can take here and there something, but basically it will remain. And by the way, even if it will not totally destroyed, then Israel just block the entrances of the facility, and then every 2 weeks will come and see that, control and be monitoring the place and see that no one is opening it. It's okay.
Let me ask you one thing, General. Look, President Trump still seems to hope that you could have a deal. Let's say there was a deal, and in the middle of this, two things, I guess. One, how would that impact Israeli operations? And two, one of the things that seems to me is a drawback of a deal is that it helps secure the survival of the regime. And more than if Israel and the United States, or Israel by itself, just does everything militarily. And that might give rise to a greater possibility of an uprising from below in Iran. But if you have a deal, it seems like it helps the regime, it secures their survival, and boosts the regime. I don't know.
Okay. My view, and I want to go back in history. When I first time met my counterpart in the White House, Tom Donilon, I told him that he asked me about the deal and so on. I say, Tom, for us, the best solution is a deal. We are not happy trigger guys. if you have a good deal in which you dismantle Iranian nuclear facilities, fantastic from the Israeli point of view. It's a very good solution. The problem was that the deal was very bad deal, not that they had a deal. And here it's the same. We are not against a deal. If the deal will be a good deal in which no facility will remain to help the Iranians to continue with the military nuclear project, and they will not allow to produce missiles more than 1,000 kilometers. I mean, they cannot reach Israel from Iran. From our point of view, it's a very good solution. If Israel has one agreement with the Americans, and it will be understood by the Iranians, that any violation will allow us to come again and to destroy whatever will be part of the violation. As we are doing in Lebanon, by the way, it's not the same. We have to fly hours back and forth, and maybe with the new refuel aeroplanes that we will buy from the Americans, it will be easier. But anyhow, at the end of the day, a good agreement for Israel is not bad. And if that will be achieved after the war, and it will be clear that Israel brought the agreement to be materialized by its success in the war, it's a fantastic situation for Israel around the Middle East. And the fact that the regime will remain an Iranian regime 1,500 kilometers from Israel, without nuclear capability, without long-range missiles, it's a problem of the Iranians, not of us. And anyhow, we cannot impose a regime in Iran. It is not in our hands. The Iranians will have to make it. So from our point of view, that encourage, I'm not sure that it will encourage the regime. The regime is speaking about it because they understand that it might be the beginning of the end of the regime, but it's not us to fight for changing the regime for the Iranian people. We can fight to be sure that this regime will not have the ability to harm Israel, to launch missiles and to have nuclear military capability. But if this regime will remain without these capabilities,
how likely though? I remember when we were talking about the hostage deal in Gaza, and I believe you said, well, you could have if you have a deal on the hostages, it's not going to be so easy to go back in if Hamas violates it. And so how likely is it that Israel is going to be able just to go back in Iran if it sees some violations? I mean, it could do it at once, I guess, but it could draw the wrath of.
No, but if it is part of the agreement, it's a different situation, like in Lebanon. The problem will be how you monitor it and how you fly long flights back to Iran. But it's a challenge. But if that will be all, the Americans can do it. But if that will be the monitoring and the ability to act whenever there is a violation of the agreement, if that will be part of the agreement, it's a very good agreement. If you impose it or we will impose it, I don't know at the end of the day what would be the line between your security and our security relating to Iran. If the agreement was done by the Americans with Israel and Iran and free partners for the agreement. What the philosophy is that if Iran does not have nuclear capability and long range missile capability, the character of the regime at the end of the day, I'll be very sorry, but we will not have to pay the price for changing it. It's the Iranian people will have to make the job relating to that.
One last question on this. Just how likely do you think that the supreme leader of Iran will make a deal under these conditions?
Look, I don't have an answer because I have two examples. One is Khomeini, the founder, that after he voted to his people, he make so many commitments that he will not compromise with Saddam Hussein, blah, 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 blah. He decided to make an agreement, and he said, I had to drink the poison because this is the situation. And the second one, relating to us, to my experience. We had been told by everyone, including our friends in America, the Iranians are not going to negotiate about their nuclear project. And we tried everything to put pressure on the Iranians, including cutting them from the whole international payment system, the SWIFT, and so on and so forth. And at the end of the day, they come to negotiate. The fact that in the American side, there are people, they are very bad negotiators with the best card that they had, they didn't achieve a good agreement, is another story. But the Iranians came against all odds and all the speculation and against all the experts who told us about that the Iranians are not ready to negotiate. No, if you put enough pressure, even the Iranians are ready to negotiate. So you ask me about a very extreme situation in which Israel is destroying the facilities inside Iran, flying over Iran like it is Gaza, asking people, areas in Tehran to move away because we are going to bomb in Tehran. I mean, it's an unbelievable situation. And for sure, if the Americans will be in, that will be devastating from the point of view of the regime. So I don't have an answer. It's very much depends how much pressure we will put on Iran, and it will reach the leader. Because I think today one of the problems that we are facing is that I'm not sure that the system around it with the new guys which substitute all those which have been eliminated by us are telling him the truth. I'm not sure about it. I don't know, but I'm not sure about it. And of course, if he doesn't understand the grave situation, he cannot make the right decision. But at the end, they cannot lie forever. The fact that we are moving people within Tehran from side to side, it's unbelievable. I mean, it's a pressure from the Iranian people. It's not about this facility or this facility.
Okay. And by the way, on that point, a good one. There's also, I would add, point to someone, there's an article in Jerusalem Post about that, I think by Jeremy Bob on that issue of that, whether the Supreme Leader is getting accurate information. I've heard that before over the last few years, that from the Israeli side, that they believe that some of the senior officials of Iran lied to the Supreme Leader, and then he's surprised. And sometimes he needs to learn things from the newspaper, from the New York Times and so on. Anyhow.
If he learned from the New York Times, he doesn't know what's going on in the Middle East.
Right. Okay. Right.
And Mike,
John,
by the way, I know some Israelis that are asking the same questions about information flow over here.
Oh, is that right? Okay. I'll get to you 1 second. I want to hear from John about how you see things here in the U.S. This, how this is playing out, the to be or not to be kind of situation with President Trump. Looked like things were trending that he was going to get in with the Israelis, and now they put out this statement. I don't know if it's a ruse or if it's accurate, but certainly there's conversations between the U.S. and the Iranians, and as we said, the Europeans and the Iranians. So how do you read all this, what's going on? And also let's do that. And then I want to see if there's how this affects also U.S.-Israel relations, you think?
Good. Well, I agree with you, Mike, that earlier this week, it really did look like when the president returned so suddenly from that G7 meeting that he was, in fact, preparing to gear up to enter the war to deliver this kind of coup de grace against the Iranian nuclear project by hitting Fordow. I think there, could be four factors that I can think of that could be introducing a degree of pause into his decision-making process. The first is simply logistically the effort to make sure he's getting everything in place in terms of this surge of American military power into the region, including what looks like putting two additional carrier strike groups, the USS Ford and the Nimitz, within range of the Middle East, one coming from the continental United States, the eastern seaboard, and the other coming from the Indo-PACOM theater, which, a week, 10 days, it could take in theory, in addition to other capabilities that are being moved closer to the theater. So that's one possible explanation. But I think there may be three other things at work that I can think of. One is simply, as a businessman, as a real estate developer, I think Trump, looking at the success of this Israeli military operation, keeps saying to himself that the Iranians can't possibly hold out much longer. Their position is being so systematically weakened that they're going to have to sue for peace, to kind of surrender their position, to come to the table and agree to the president's terms. That's what any sensible New York real estate developer would do in this situation. And I'm not sure he's quite processed that the people on the other side are not, New York real estate developers, as tough as that community is, but it's a deeply ideological, committed, paranoid regime that has perhaps a much different view of this. So I do think at some level the president keeps hoping day by day, hour by hour, that they might get the call that the Iranians are prepared to make a major concession that would allow Trump not to have to move forward here. And you certainly are seeing a lot of behind the scenes diplomacy being revealed in recent days, including these what look like direct discussions between Steve Witkoff and the Iranian foreign minister. Second thing, I think that people shouldn't underestimate its potential impact on the president. And I'm not sure how much people follow this, particularly in Israel, but just there is a real internal battle, a war going on within the MAGA movement, within the president's own very powerful political base, the likes of which we haven't seen so far. As bad as the feuds were early on between Elon Musk and Steve Bannon over the issue of H-1B immigrant visas, that's small potatoes compared to how serious this potential rift is within the president's political base between those led by people like Tucker Carlson and the other side of MAGA, some of the people in the U.S. Senate, including people like Tom Cotton and Lindsey Graham. But it's very fierce, and it's all about this question of, is this war against Iran any of America's business? Are we being led into this war under some kind of false pretenses by Israel? It's a very dangerous debate, but one that's very important to the president. I'm sure he worries about what if things don't go well in Iran, or as smoothly as he hopes, that there could be a real dramatic political rift within MAGA that could weaken the president for much of the rest of his presidency. So I do think that's weighing on him. And if there's a way for him to get out of having to strike and having to risk this political breach in his own movement, I think he's hoping that this decision might be removed from his shoulders by some kind of Iranian capitulation at the negotiating table. And then the third thing I would say is that we've gotten reporting in recent days that the president has pressed about the success or the likelihood of dramatic success by a strike on Fordow. And while he's been told that we think we can destroy Fordow, that he's not entirely convinced yet. I think the real debate in his mind is, if I do Fordow, one night's work, drop several massive ordnance penetrators on that site and destroy it, am I likely to have a one and done kind of operation like the hit against Qasem Soleimani back in 2020, where I demonstrate American power, I can claim a full success for a very limited, time-constrained operation, the Iranians do some kind of symbolic response, but don't kill Americans, don't do great damage to American interests, and then I can get out of it and somehow leave the rest to Israel and become the peacemaker. And I don't think any responsible policymaker or advisor can give him those kinds of assurances that he might be seeking, because while it may be one possible outcome, even maybe a probable outcome, that the Iranians, knowing that that any massive retaliation could be a suicide mission, that they do pull back and are very careful and calculated in how they respond to a successful American strike on Fordow, but they've threatened, of course, to do a lot of things, particularly against American bases. They could end up killing Americans. They could end up trying to broaden the war, go against certain critical Gulf oil infrastructure, or, as we read about today in the New York Times, a real danger that they could mine the Strait of Hormuz and shut that down for a period of time and really initiate trigger a real shock against global energy markets for some period of time until the U.S. Navy can clear that out. And I think that possibility of that the Iranians miscalculate, that they do believe that they'd rather respond, that it's more risky not to do anything in response to an American strike on Fordow than to try and do something and inflict some damage and get people to pressure United States and Israel to stop this war. If they do that, then I'm sure the president's advisors are telling him, while we hope it will finish with Fordow, you've got to be ready, Mr. President, to go fairly quickly and dramatically up an escalation ladder in the Middle East that might last several more days or even weeks of a campaign to really go after Iran and perhaps even threaten the survival of that regime. And I'll stop there, other than to say, of course, that's why the diplomacy surrounding any American strike, that ability to get a very direct, precise, and credible American warning directly to Iran and Iranian decision makers, including the supreme leader, about what is the purpose of a strike on Fordow and what risks are the Iranians credibly running if they decide to do anything beyond some kind of symbolic strike.
All right, one last question. I want to turn to General Eich, and I know there's a lot to talk about, but one question I have, I guess, is before I ask Eich a similar question, but about Israel. And as you explained, John, there are those in the MAGA area movement who think this is not a U.S. issue. This is an Israeli problem, despite the fact that 5 American presidents, including Trump, have vowed that they won't allow a nuclear Iran. I worry. I personally think it has value, even if Israel could handle it by itself. I'd actually like to see America involved because it's a signal, not just end this war more quickly, but as a signal to our allies and to our adversaries like China that the United States is going to protect its interests and not going to shy away from a close ally in such an important fight. I think that's important for the U.S. credibility and for our position in the region. Even if Israel could do it by itself, I see value in America participating. But I don't know. How do you see it?
I don't disagree with you, Mike. Listen, I remember back in 2007 when we were intensely involved in discussions about what to do about the reactor in Syria, the Khobar reactor. I know that my boss weighed in, I think alone, saying this ought to be an American mission. It ought to be an American message that we are not prepared to tolerate the proliferation of nuclear weapons in any critical theater of the world. We had missed that opportunity with North Korea, and my boss saw it as necessary and as Vice President Cheney as essential to American national interests, that we ought to be the ones to handle that problem. I don't know if he's on today's webinar, but our good friend Elliot Abrams argued equally as strongly that he thought this probably should be done by Israel. Israel defends itself by itself. This was first and foremost a major existential threat to Israel, and it would be good and positive and salutary for the entire region around Israel to see Israel be at the forefront without any real American assistance, taking care of this problem on its own. So you can argue it both ways, but as an American who, as I was talking to General Eich before we got on, that it seems like the last 25 years of our careers have all been pointing us in this particular historical direction, and this culminating moment to actually finally, at last, after going up and down this hill of a possible action to end the Iranian nuclear program, we are finally here. As 5 American presidents, including President Trump, have said this is vital to America's national interests, even existential to American interests, that this most dangerous country that chants death to America, that has got a 40-year record of killing and maiming and American citizens and troops and attacking our interests in the Middle East, of targeting our political leadership and our citizens, of terrorism against American targets around the world, could be building an intercontinental ballistic missile to put a nuclear weapon on top of that. For our own reasons and purposes, this is intolerable. It's essential that we take care of this and that we send a message to the world that America will not tolerate this kind of proliferation to countries that mean us harm, if not the destruction of the United States. So I totally understand what you're saying, and I sympathize with it a lot.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. And so, Ice, I appreciate your patience. But let me ask you, start with that question about Israel. There are those who say if Israel could handle this by itself, roughly, maybe not as good. I'm not asking General Norkin what the thoughts are about Fordow or you or any of you, but if Israel can mostly handle this by itself, maybe it's better for Israel to handle it by itself. It'd be a real statement of, as I was reading, or I was listening to John Ponhoretz, I think said in his the commentary podcast the other day, it'd be a real expression of Zionism for Israel to take care of this by itself. Then you also wouldn't have to worry about some of the debate here in the U.S. that the Israel starts something and then we have to get in it. Now again, I believe this
Mike,
is yes. How do you see it?
yeah, I'll be very clear here. As far as I know, and I met today and I spent more than 2 hours with very prominent Israeli generals from the general staff. The mission that was given to the IDF to destroy the nuclear program, to eliminate it. And the operational idea that the IDF is implementing since day one with its intelligence, with the Air Force, is to eliminate their military leadership, their command control capabilities, their air defense capabilities, their industrial base for ballistic missiles, their nuclear program conversion, enrichment, and so on and so forth. And it's not enough. But the idea is that the integration of this comprehensive approach, which will take us some few weeks ahead of us, will achieve that mission. And it is a mission not to the US. It is a mission to the IDF given by the Israeli government. And we have to be very clear here. It seems to me like we tend to speak too much about Fordow. By the way, we are missing some other elements which are very important, such as the amount of fissile material, which I'm not sure that everyone knows exactly if it is in Fordow and what it is out of Fordow. So it means that doing Fordow is not enough. And at the end of the day, with all the importance of Fordow, and it is a very important facility, what they have over there is a storage capabilities and enrichment capabilities. So they have enriched already 450 kilograms of material up to 60%. So at the end of the day, we have to achieve that mission. And as far as I understand from my colleagues, it's a very clear mission. And the IDF as a whole, with the Air Force at the head, is very committed to it. And it will take time. And we are saying it for many years. You have heard it from me. We don't have the capabilities of the US. We have our own humble capabilities, but we have a very strong will and very high motivation to achieve it.
Yeah.
We have no other choice. And we have to stick to these basic elements. We have no other choice. The Prime Minister, the head of the intelligence, the head of the IDF told us exactly that they were running towards a bomb. They were running towards weaponizing their capabilities. It's not a joke. It's not a certain stage. They were aiming to achieve a bomb in a very short period of time. So with that said, I think the mission for the IDF is very clear. If we are going to have the benefit in the future of the US coming in, it will be great, but it should be a benefit. We cannot build a whole plan on that. And it seems to me like the Israeli government and the IDF were aiming exactly to that point. That's why there is such a comprehensive approach. If I'll take the list of targets that the Air Force is attacking, the Mossad is dealing with, and some other capabilities, it's a very comprehensive and wide one. And they are very persistent to achieve it. And you can see how they are advancing from one stage to the other. And to my opinion, this is one important stage. With your permission, another word about the day after, because we tend to be very focused on the operational aspects of this war with Iran, and we don't speak enough about the day after. With all the respect to the achievements of this operation, without a very intrusive inspection program coming after as part of an agreement, a bilateral or trilateral or an international agreement with Iran, it won't be enough, as my colleagues have mentioned at the beginning. They will be able, they have the know-how, they have the university. They'll be able, to try and pursue these weapons of mass destruction somewhere else. So at the end of the day, we need something very similar to what we have seen post-World War II in Japan, this type of inspection. It's not the inspection or the agreement that we have seen in 2015, the JCPOA. It should be on a different level. And this is something that I hope that at our political echelon and at the US are already talking about it. Maybe it will be part of the solution to the day after. And there are some other elements, but I don't want to take all the time and talking about them. But there are some other elements. We are talking here about a totally different region, totally different system compared to what the Iranian have built around us. And we will have to build the IDF to deal with those challenges in one hand, and on the other hand, to take the opportunity, to seize the opportunity to expand the agreements such as the Abraham Accord to a wider one, because the best stability that you can achieve based on an agreement and peace. And that's for a fact something that we all know. So I assume that all those elements are on the table, maybe for the day after, but these are things that we have to consider now and to see what we are doing now to impact and to affect those directions as well.
Yeah, I appreciate all that, Aish. And let me ask you, and by the way, let me clarify. I think, one thing that the region and the world has learned in the last year or so is not to underestimate the Israeli military. Anybody does that at their peril, and I would add their intelligence service, the foreign intelligence service, the Mossad, because what we've seen in Israel, especially in Lebanon, in Syria, in Iran, has been incredibly impressive. So when you say that you have your own capabilities, you humbly say we have our own humble capabilities. I think we have to take that very seriously. Also, we've seen with this campaign, it's given light to so much what I've heard in Washington for a long time now, that Israel doesn't have the capability. They can't do it. Their time has passed. They should have done it maybe in 2012. It's also that the Prime Minister doesn't have the guts. And I think those people have obviously been proven wrong. So we shouldn't underestimate anything that Israel could do, given the really incredibly impressive performance they've had in this campaign, in Hezbollah, in Lebanon, and elsewhere. So I wanted to just say that. But let
It's
me,
not, Mike, if I
sorry.
may, it's not just technological capabilities, technology. It's not just a technology. In the past, and very well, we already talked about it for more than 10 years, about Iran. But we always spoke about Iran as an operation, as a one or two sorties of activities. And once we change the whole era with in Syria and Lebanon, there is no threat from Hezbollah. We can fly all over Syria. The most important thing is that the plan has been changed. Okay, there is no time limit for one sortie or two sorties. You can fly there, you can achieve the air superiority, and then you can go and come back once again and once again to the nuclear program and to destroy more and more targets for 1 week, for 2 weeks, for 3 weeks. We cannot imagine to do such a plan once Hezbollah is there and the Syrian regime with all the air defense systems is in Syria. So the key issue is that the all first circle around Israel is completely different, and we can act. And I'm very proud that the people at the military change the structure of the Iranians' plans in very short time, in a very short time.
It's a very important point, General Norkin. I appreciate your mentioning that. General Amidjor, how do you? We only have a few more minutes, and so how do you assess?
Well, I said what the same as was said by General Norkin. When I was there, the question was, okay, we attack in Iran. What we do with Hezbollah? Hezbollah disappeared. The question was, okay, the Air Force has to fight the whole way to Iran. We don't have to fight the whole way to Iran. We have a corridor, open corridor. When we come to Iran, we will have to deal with all the sophisticated anti-air. There is no any anti-air system. It's a totally different situation. And because it's totally different situation, the whole plan and all capabilities that you spoke about before are not relevant. And I'm sure that with the, Israel is not the most, how to say it, ordered system in the world. Not the IDF, not the state. But we have a huge flexibility. And I'm sure that when we speak, some young, smart Israelis are sitting somewhere and say, if we will do it in this direction and not in this direction, the damage that he thought it will be on this place will be different, because now we can act almost free from all the restrictions and the problems that we had in the past. And in the new situation, I'm sure that new solutions will be found.
So let me ask you. I appreciate all that. We haven't touched on this. I want to ask you, General Amidjor. Look, we've talked about Netanyahu has talked about hoping that there be an uprising, and as you point out, Israel can't engineer it. However, let me just ask you: are you seeing anything about defections of in the Iranian military? Anything of maybe not an uprising, but of demonstrations on the ground in Iran?
No, up till now we don't see an opposition.
Yeah,
we see many demonstrations, and in most of them it's about the people like the idea that we are hitting the regime, but there is no any real organization which we might call the opposition. There is no any opposition with leadership, with someone you can say, this is. It didn't happen yet. Yes, the regime is much weaker, and people ask themselves, "This is the regime that you have? It didn't deliver anything. Not Hezbollah, not Gaza, not Syria, not Tehran. Look what happened in Tehran. Look what happened in Tehran. It is something unbelievable." But we don't see the organized opposition yet, and we don't see crack within the system. About crack within the system, it's very hard to see.
Yeah.
Because you understand, they will try to make it as secret as possible. And so that probably cannot be seen by us. But what's my hope, but still it is not happening. The street is not in a big hit.
I wonder, I don't know, one doesn't know, but all those people fleeing Tehran, you wonder how that affects things a bit, and who are those people that are are fleeing. But
All the people from Tehran, from all different sectors within the society, because we are calling areas to be moved and with everyone.
one last thing, General Amidjor, and I want to recognizing what General Aish said.
By the way, in the social media, it's clear. In the social media, there, we are getting so many blessings for the ordinary people. In TikTok is unbelievable. I have a friend who speaks fluently Persian, and she sent me it's unbelievable what is in the social media, but it's not enough to deal with such a cruel dictatorship. You need something stronger than that.
Yeah. Let me recognizing that what General Aish said, that there's been a little too much focus on Fordow, and he's right. But just for, indulge me here, General Amidjor. If would you assess an Iranian response if the U.S. decides to strike Fordow? Obviously, they've made many threats. They'll hit, U.S. forces. They made a lot of threats over the last, couple recently. So, how do you assess how the Iranian reaction?
I was asked by Sky, the British network, about the promises of the leader that America will suffer enormously if they attack Iran. And I told Sky he is using old language which is not relevant in the new world.
Yeah.
He doesn't have all the proxies to do it. He can bomb American facilities and neighboring countries from Iran, but he's taking the risk of being eliminated totally by the Americans.
Yeah.
I mean, it is something that if you have a little bit of responsibility, and he has responsibilities, he might be very religious and he thinks that God is with him and so on and so forth, but he has responsibility for his own people. He doesn't want to be to destroy everything in Iran. Iran is important for it. Yeah. So yes, they can, but at the end of the day, I think that in the networks they are very much exaggerating about what the Iranians might do and can do after losing all the proxies.
Do you think?
And remember, they need the same missiles to use against their neighbors, and we degrade their ability to launch the missiles.
And do you think, therefore, there's been a little exaggeration of concern by some here that if U.S. gets in, it'll be a long war, et cetera, et cetera?
No, I think that it is a different war. We don't need any boots on the ground, not even one. It's out of the cards. There is one big problem that we need the Americans to solve. It's Fordow. We don't need the Americans for the continuation of the war. Give us the refueling airplanes, the new Boeing kind of, and we will do. And we don't need. We have enough from everything. We know how to do it. We are controlling Iran. Now there is one very specific point that we cannot do by ourselves with the tools that we have now. It's Fordow. Theoretically, don't take part in the war. Come one night, destroy Fordow, and go back home. This is the end of the I think it will be a bad idea, because if you decide to be in, you can dictate the agreement. Yeah. If you go in and out, you cannot. But this is an American decision. If you decide to be in just to make Fordow, for us, it's just to make Fordow.
And I recognize what General Aish said earlier, that Israel has its own capabilities to address that issue. And I know that I could maybe I'm wrong, but General Norkin is probably thinking to himself, well, don't underestimate the Air Force.
No, I don't. At the end of the day, it will not be as good as the Americans.
Okay.
It will be something that we will find with our flexibility how to do it, but it's not going to be as good as the Americans. But yes, if the Americans don't come, Israel will have to find solution.
Put the ball in the basket.
Yeah, that's it.
Yes, many balls in the basket.
Use a basketball analogy. Let me ask you one last thing between. We'll stop. But General Amidjor or General Norkin, correct me if I'm wrong. I thought I read that there's still a number of short-range missiles It seems like Israel is focused certainly on the missiles that could attack Israel, but I asked that also because one of the concerns, if the U.S. does get in, is the impact of some of these short-range missiles. Now, also been reports that El Udeid in Qatar, the U.S. base there in Qatar, has been almost completely emptied, which, by the way, kind of confirms something that our Jinsa's distinguished fellow, General McKenzie, the previous CENTCOM commander, wrote in a paper in September that that El Udeid is a liability. We should be focusing more on building assets farther away from Iran. But I just point that out because there's a lot of focus here. I think an overstatement of how important that base is. But let me ask you, General Aisha, General Norkin, on the short-range missiles, because that could affect the
I don't remember the numbers.
Oh.
The Americans have their own procedures. They are doing it very seriously. And I think that they know what to do. They have a better information that I have at home about the number of the short missiles that the Iranians have.
I don't know if the General Aisha or Norkin want to have a say on that also.
Well, I think, Mike, I think that it's a tactical question on a strategic issue. You cannot compare. And the threat is, any threat is a threat, but this is not a threat that should be the major parameter that should be the leading parameter for decisions.
Okay. We got 2 minutes left. Anybody have any final thoughts before we conclude?
I suggest two elements for the last, just a last word. I think we should think about the day after. The day after is a lot of things that we in JINSA have discussed. I think we should speak about MOU. The IDF will have to reform itself, rebuild itself, not only stockpiles, stockpile platforms, doctrine, and many other things. And I think that technology, the capabilities, the support of the US here is a necessity. This is one element, and it should be an integral part into a future national defense treaty that practically is applied. If you are analyzing what has happened between CENTCOM / the US, IDF, and Israel during this war, you can see it happening already. The only thing that is missing is to formalize it and really build on it and win from it all the strategic benefits in the future. And I'll stop here.
Okay.
I think that to emphasize that the MOU is the best investment that Americans have, I think it's very important, and it will be more important after the war.
Okay.
Agreed.
In the last 30 seconds.
And we have to start with it yesterday.
Yeah. John, last 30 seconds. Any final thoughts?
No, I think I'll leave it there, Mike, other than to note short-range missiles might be a tactical problem. It will be a strategic problem for the United States if a strike in Fordow results in significant American deaths anywhere in the Persian Gulf, the mining of the Strait of Hormuz, anything that for this president could result and threaten an extended campaign will not look like a cakewalk or a simple layup into the basket for him. It'll be something completely contrary to the promises he made to his base about getting into extended conflicts and losing American citizens in these kinds of wars. So I would just introduce that cautionary note that we need to be, careful and mindful of the political, the politics, and the situation here in the United States, and the possibility that things can go wrong. And we shouldn't be shy about warning about those possibilities and preparing our decision makers for what might come next. We all hope it goes as a layup or just putting it in the basket and going home. But things have a way of surprising you at times.
Okay. I prefer baseball analogies, but these basketball ones have been good. I want to thank everybody. I want to thank General Norkin, General Light, General Amidjor, John Hanna for joining us. I want to thank everybody for joining us. Please stay tuned for, by the way, not just our webinars, but all the emails we put out about the resources we put out about the missile strikes, the research, the op-eds. You should look at our website, jinsa.org, for a lot of information about the war. And please stay tuned for when we schedule our next webinar like this for early next week. Thank you very much. Wish everyone in Israel hopefully a quiet night, no sirens, I hope, and wish everyone a good rest of the week. Have a good night.
Thank you. Good night, Mike. Good night.
Good night. Shabbat shalom. Litot.
Shalom.
Shabbat shalom.